There's a reason why Izuku Midoriya is sometimes referred to fans as the absolute madman. And that is because he pulls off some crazy feats of strength, determination, and heroism that often leave us completely shook. And he's not the only character who does so. Throughout all of My Hero Academia, there have been some jaw-dropping moments that left us absolutely blown away. So without further ado, let's take a look at a few of them. Starting off, we have one of the most emotionally powerful moments from the first episode of My Hero Academia, when All Might asked Izuku to be his successor. There were a number of reasons why this moment was so powerful, the biggest of which was that Deku learned he could still become a hero despite having given up hope since he didn't have a quirk. Thanks to All Might choosing him, Izuku could now help people like he always wanted to, the moment leading him to become overwhelmed with emotion. Seeing Deku cry from his dream coming true was definitely powerful, as was the fact that for watching those for the first time, we learned there was another way for the protagonist to become a hero aside from being born with a quirk. Additionally, it was also powerful that All Might saw Deku's heroic heart within a short time of meeting him, quickly seeing that he was worthy of inheriting One for All and becoming the hero he always dreamed to be. This moment was as shocking for Deku as it was for us, seeing him break down from the joy of being able to pursue the path of a hero, shaking us to our cores. Next up is arguably one of the best Midoriya character moments in the entire series, his fight with Muscular. Not only was this battle epic in terms of action and dramatic high points, it was also a moment that gave Koda, the hero-hating son of heroes who died in battle, a reason to believe in heroes again. Despite making it clear that he wanted nothing to do with Deku, the hero in training still gave everything he had to defend him, pushing One for All to its limits. Speaking of the action, every hit in this fight was powerful and beautifully animated, especially Deku's final Detroit Smash, which sent Muscular through a wall of rock in one of the coolest finishing moves in the series. The effort and power that Deku put into that final punch was enough to leave us shook, as was his unrelenting determination to protect Koda, which drove him to push One for All to its limits and leave him beaten and battered. But if you ask him, it was all worth it to protect one person. Of course, if you ask Deku's mom, she'd probably think the opposite, since his constant injuries had left her just as worried as any other mother would be. Midoriya and Bakugo are rivals, so they're technically competing against each other all the time. However, in terms of full-on fights, there are only two main instances where the characters faced off against each other, during their first exam and after All Might's battle with All for One. Both of these fights left us shook for different reasons. The exam battle, which also included Ochako on Deku's team and Tenya on Bakugo's team, was the first time that Bakugo truly saw Deku as a rival. For a long time, he was nothing to him. Even though he got into UA, Bakugo had no reason to acknowledge him, until his team won the match. Not only did Deku outmaneuver Bakugo, he also outsmarted him, using his final attack to help Ochako win the match, leaving both us and Bakugo shook. Fast forward to the aftermath of All Might's final battle, and the two rivals faced off once more. Like their previous battle, the fight itself left us shook, but what was just as intense was the emotion that Bakugo felt, fearing that he had caused All Might's downfall, an issue that was eventually settled when All Might and Deku told him about One for All. We've already made it clear that shocking moments in My Hero Academia don't just have to be awesome battles. They can also be about how emotionally and dramatically striking a scene is, like the scene where All Might asks for Inko Midoriya's permission to have Izuku stay at the dorms. It's incredibly powerful. The reason that the students of UA were asked to move into dorms had to do with the fact that they'd been targeted so much and so often that it'd be easier to keep them safe in the care of the school. It was a move that made sense on UA's part, but we also understand why Inko was against it, since she watched her son get injured far too many times as a result of attending UA. She wasn't convinced that the school had her son's safety covered, which is why All Might bowed and made a promise. The All Might humbled himself before Inko because he was so fully respectful of her thoughts that he needed to show her he was willing to do whatever it took to help Izuku achieve his dream. The scene was undoubtedly powerful, really making us feel all the feels. The UA High School Sports Festival had a lot of great fights and powerful moments throughout, but perhaps the most powerful of them all was Shoto Todoroki's battle against Izuku, which was as emotionally intense as it was action-packed. Prior to the battle, we learned that Todoroki refused to use his fire powers, unwilling to embrace his abusive father's powers in order to carve his own path as a hero. As Deku was the one that Todoroki was telling this to, he learned of his denial of his fire powers, and during their fight, something snapped. He fought with all of his might to communicate to Todoroki that he shouldn't deny his gifts, that he should use what he has to follow his own path. Both because of the fact that Deku was screaming this notion at the top of his lungs and because he broke every one of his fingers fighting Todoroki to get him to use his fire half, going on to use his mouth just to continue using all of his one-for-all strength, we just had to include this in our picks of My Hero Academia moments that left us shook. It sure as heck left us shaken to our core. Prior to the release of My Hero Academia 2 Heroes, it was made pretty clear that All Might and Deku, the two current wielders of One for All, wouldn't get to fight side by side since All Might had lost his powers, and would never fight again. However, thanks to the series' first feature film, which took place before All Might's retirement, we got to see the two characters team up for an awesome finale. During the climax of the film, the main villain Wolfram activated the quirk-enhancing device while also activating the second quirk that All for One gave him, turning into a massive metal monster that seemed impossible to beat. However, once All Might and Deku teamed up, with the latter armed with his injury-preventing arm guard, it was all over, as the two uber-powerful heroes let their strength loose in the coolest way possible. Seriously, this final fight was awesome, with some stellar animation to go with all the ridiculously cool attacks thrown by Deku and All Might. The coolest part was the big finale where they teamed up for the Detroit Smash. Both heroes punched with everything they had to make for one of the greatest fights in the series, one that left us completely shook. Mirio Togata very quickly became a lot of people's favorite character, and we can't blame them, since he had quite the introduction. And that's not just because he ended up naked. While this was definitely part of why Mirio's introduction was so, memorable, the rest of it has to do with how quickly he defeated the entirety of Class 1A. Using his quirk Permeation and his mastery of it, Mirio was able to take on all of the members of 1A and defeat them within a matter of minutes, showing just how far ahead the third years of UA High School were. Mirio completely wiped the floor with 1A, which is why we were left as shocked as the students that they were defeated so easily. Seriously, it was crazy how one student was able to take out an entire class like they were nothing. What was just as shocking was the fact that Mirio's quirk wasn't actually all that strong or useful, he just got really good at using it. Specifically, if Mirio turns his whole body intangible, he will sink into the ground, where he can't breathe or see, so he just trained super hard to master its faults, making him one of the coolest characters in the series. All Might offering to pass his power down to Izuku was a powerful moment, but it wasn't a guarantee that Deku would get into UA and become a full-fledged pro hero. Deku still had to work for it, and the entrance exam that proved he was worthy of getting into the country's greatest superhero high school ended up being one of the greatest moments in the series. Specifically, when Deku used One for All for the first time to save Ochako, leaving him a broken-boned mess. While he only destroyed one robot, Deku still got into UA for his heroic instinct, meaning the fact that he stepped in to save someone proved he had what it takes to be a hero, earning a rescue bonus and entrance into UA. In fact, when Deku received his acceptance video, it was emotionally powerful. Deku learned that his actions had gotten him into UA, and it left us shook because of how invested we were in his journey. We've stated before that Katsuki Bakugo is something of a garbage boy. A trashy, angry gremlin with an aggressive and straight-up terrible personality that makes us surprised his friends have stuck around him for so long. We know we're not alone in thinking that Bakugo's personality is pure trash. Fans have stated as much plenty of times. However, the greatest testament to how trashy and aggressive Bakugo's personality is comes from the fact that he was kidnapped by the League of Villains. After his aggressive display at the UA Sports Festival, the League of Villains believed that Bakugo was villain material, someone who could easily be manipulated into working with them. While this should have been a sign for Bakugo to reflect on himself, he still managed to turn things around by stating he'd never join the likes of villain scum, shutting down the descent into villainy that we thought might happen to the character. This rejection, as well as the power that Bakugo put behind the statement, was why we were left shaken to our core, since it was made clear that while he's an aggressive garbage boy at times, Bakugo ain't no villain, and never will be. Like we mentioned before, the UA High School Sports Festival was chock full of powerful moments that left us shook, another one of them being Ochako's battle against Bakugo. While Ochako seems carefree and always in a bubbly mood, beneath this lies the heart of a hero, one who wants to become a pro so she can support her family. Due to this powerful motivation, Ochako was more determined than ever during the sports festival to prove herself as a hero, seeing as the festival also served as an event for recruiters to see the young heroes at work. In other words, Ochako had a lot of pressure to prove her worth in her first battle of the festival against Bakugo. Unfortunately, Bakugo's explosion quirk is far more capable in a combat situation, which is why this match seemed unbalanced, but Ochako didn't let that stop her from giving it her best. The battle left us shook for the main reason that Ochako was giving it everything she had, using Bakugo's quirk against him by creating a storm of his debris that she shot back at him. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to defeat him, but it showed just how badass Ochako is, leaving us shook from her determination. This next one is probably the least serious entry in the video, but we just had to include it. Of course, we're talking about the sports festival when Todoroki fought against Hanta Sero, whom he absolutely dominated with his ice. In fact, that's literally the reason why we chose this as one of the moments that left us shook. It gave us a look at just how powerful Todoroki's power was. Seriously, the guy was called a prodigy for a reason, and he proved it when he made a giant glacier of ice to trap and stop Sero before he could even make a single move. It's not that we were surprised Todoroki won the battle. The other guy's power is tape after all, but the scale to which he beat him was completely bonkers. The reason for Todoroki's extreme icy overkill was due to an interaction that the hero in training had with his father prior to the match. Man, if that's how powerful Shoto is when he's mad, we'd hate to see that anger directed at a villain since they'd probably get frozen completely solid. Before All Might chose Izuku as his successor, another majorly shocking thing happened. Deku learned the great hero's secret. All Might was only able to hold his muscled form for a short period of time after a particularly tough battle with All For One. This was shocking to both Deku and us the viewers, since up until then, neither of us had any reason to believe that All Might wasn't as powerful and capable as he appeared to be. It's a great twist to start a series off with, both because it showed that heroes aren't what they seem to be, and because it sets up the premise of Izuku being All Might's successor. As for how shocking it was for Deku himself, we saw his reaction. He totally lost it. Seriously, the guy worshipped All Might, so it makes sense that his whole world would be shattered by seeing the normally buff hero as a skinny, blood-coughing-up wimp from one moment to the next. In fact, our reaction was pretty much the same, since up until then we also only knew All Might as one of the world's greatest heroes. Learning that All Might wasn't all that he seemed to be left us and Izuku completely shook. Deku is simply put really freaking smart. On top of getting good grades at UA, he's also a master strategist and is incredibly observational when it comes to his fellow students. When coming up with a plan to rescue Bakugo, Izuku knew that his rival would be too proud to accept a helping hand, so he made the rescue operation more of an opportunity for Bakugo to rescue himself. Additionally, Deku knew to have Kirishima at the front of the operation, since if it were anyone else, Bakugo would have likely rejected the chance. These two factors led to Bakugo being pulled out of danger so that All Might could fully fight All For One, and the moment was so awesome that it left us shook. Specifically, the fact that Izuku's plan worked, and the fact that these relatively low-level students were able to outsmart and escape the clutches of someone like All For One was astounding. In fact, it made us believe that Deku was capable of anything, and that he could be the one to truly bring an end to the League of Villains. Maybe this won't end up being the case, but one thing is for certain, this rescue scene left us completely shook. On the surface, Fumikage Tokoyami might not seem like the most powerful hero. Sure, his quirk is useful, but it never seemed all that high on the power scale of his class. However, that all changed during the training camp arc. As the villains descended upon the camp, Tokoyami was forced to defend himself. But in the dark of night, his dark shadow is much harder to control than in the light. Due to this, as well as the fear that resulted from the villain attack, Tokoyami was unable to control Dark Shadow, making for one of the most horrifying scenes in the series. Upon finding Tokoyami in the chaos, his classmates witnessed his Dark Shadow taking his body over, and attack without a mercy or reason, showing just how strong his quirk was and kind of scaring us in the process. Seriously, now we know why Tokoyami was screaming when he was training his control over Dark Shadow in a dark cave. That thing is wild when there's no light, both because of how insanely powerful and big Dark Shadow had become, as well as the pain and fear in Tokoyami's eyes as his quirk took over him. This moment left us completely and utterly shook. The final moment in this video is easily the best part of the third season of My Hero Academia, and perhaps the entire series. Of course, we're talking about All Might's battle against All For One. The main reason that this battle was so awesome was the fact that All For One was the big bad that had been set up for multiple story arcs, being described as the origin of One For All as well as the arch-nemesis of it. For generations, the users of One For All have been battling All For One, so when All Might finally beat the villain into the ground, It was a powerful and awesome moment that shook us to our very core. What made it even better was the fact that the entire fight was beautifully animated. Each one of All Might's attacks had a desperate weight behind it, as All for One faded from his body and the world learned of his secret, a moment that itself left us shook. However, nothing shook us as much as All Might pointing out to the crowd to tell Deku that he's next, meaning it's his turn to be the symbol of peace that he could no longer be. So there you have it, the most shocking and intense moments of My Hero Academia. Did we leave anything out? Which were your favorite? Did any of these moments leave you speechless? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more anime videos. Thanks for watching.